Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell have been sharing the silver screen and a life together for many a year now. They're in conversation with Tracy Smith.
Relationships go through periods, sometimes really hard times, but there's nothing sweeter than having a family, and that is worth everything.
There are smiles that make the world believe they hide a perfect life behind them. Goldie Hawn was one of those faces. America's sweetheart, an Oscar winner at a young age, the queen of romantic comedies who could fill theaters with laughter. Yet the glittering light on the silver screen was only a mask for a heart torn apart by love more times than one can count. 2 broken marriages, bitter words from ex-husbands, long nights wondering if she was truly worthy of love. Goldie was once called selfish, cruel, fake. Her children watched their father pushed out of their lives, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Beneath Hollywood's dazzling lights, she was at times so lonely she nearly accepted that happiness might never belong to her. And yet, at 79, Goldie confessed. There was one man who had pulled her back from the abyss. A love without wedding rings, without vows, but strong enough to endure more than 4 decades in a world where most romances die within just a few years. How does a woman who has lived through such bitter ruins still carry that sparkling gaze and find peace in a love without bindings? Goldie Hawn was born in Washington, D.C., into a middle-class Jewish family where music and dance filled every corner of the home. Her father was a musician and orchestra conductor, while her mother ran a small jewelry shop and taught dance. From an early age, Goldie was tied to the stage, dancing at 3, appearing in the Nutcracker at just 10. As a college student, she was expelled for devoting herself to touring performances. Yet that setback did nothing to halt her momentum. After a period working as a nightclub dancer in New York, Goldie caught the eye of producers and in 1968 was cast in Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Only a year later, Cactus Flower shot her straight to the Oscars and Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. A breakout that made all of Hollywood take notice. Throughout the 1970s, she continued her success with Butterflies Are Free Shampoo, Foul Play, and by the time of Private Benjamin, 1980, she had become a true box office queen. Yet the brighter she shone on screen, the more unsteady her personal life became. Fame brought with it temptations and emptiness. Endless parties, men constantly circling around her, film contracts piling up, all of it left Goldie perpetually torn, to remain the star adored on the silver screen, or to be a woman longing simply for the comfort of a steady embrace. Goldie Hawn once believed that marriage would be her safe harbor, a refuge to soothe the insecurities rooted in childhood. Yet it was within those very marriages that she endured the deepest cuts of her life. In 1969, as Goldie Hawn stepped onto the stage to accept her Oscar for Cactus Flower, the world erupted in awe at the radiant new star. But just months later, she quietly wed Gus Trikonis, a young dancer and actor she had loved long before anyone knew the name Goldie Hawn. They married in Hawaii under a blazing red sunset, sharing not only vows but also the same birthday, as if bound by destiny itself. At the time, Gus was far from famous. He had only danced in the background of West Side Story, while Goldie was still struggling for a foothold. She married him not for glamour or ambition, but out of pure, fervent love. To her, Gus was a steady anchor, the simple man who gave her a real home. But that Oscar moment in 1969 changed everything. Goldie transformed overnight from an unknown actress into an A-list star. Film shoots, contracts, interviews flooded in. Meanwhile, Gus floundered in a fading career. He tried directing, but no one remembered his name. The distance between them widened. Goldie walked the red carpet. Gus lingered quietly in the shadows. At home, conversations turned into silence. Goldie brought home hefty checks while Gus carried the weight of failure. The love that once lit their lives had darkened into a heavy shadow, strained between one's soaring success and the other's disappointment. By 1973, they separated. 3 years later, Goldie filed for divorce. Gus did not leave quietly. Bitterly, he accused his wife of changing, chasing the superstar world, abandoning her husband. And to end the marriage, he demanded $75,000, a staggering sum at the time. For Goldie, it wasn't just money. It was betrayal. She later described that demand as a painful cut because the sincere love of her youth had been reduced to the value of a business contract. The public saw Goldie on screen, glamorous, beaming, full of life. Few saw her return home, sit alone in a vast empty room, recalling their Hawaiian wedding and asking herself, when did love die? Was it the moment I held the Oscar, or the moment he began looking at me with envy instead of affection? Her marriage to Gus left Goldie with a bitter lesson. Success can turn lovers into strangers under the same roof. And from that moment, she carried a secret fear that any love could be torn apart by fame overnight. If her marriage to Gus Trikonis was the first cut, then Bill Hudson was the blade that drove deep into Goldie Hawn's heart. She met Bill in 1975 on a flight from New York to Los Angeles. He was a singer and actor, charming, confident, the kind of man who could make a newly separated Goldie laugh. What seemed like chance quickly spiraled into a whirlwind romance. Love came too fast, like an anesthetic numbing the wound of her first marriage. On July 3, 1976, they married in Washington, D.C., the city of Goldie's birth. On the wedding aisle, Bill looked at her as though she were a treasure. Yet in that very moment, Goldie lowered her head and whispered, "Are you sure we're doing the right thing?" A trembling question, an omen for the storm their life together would become. They had 2 children, Oliver and Kate, who seemed destined to bind the family together. But Bill soon realized Goldie was not the woman of quiet family dinners and domestic calm. She was at the peak of her career, dazzling millions with her roles and laughter. He wanted a wife at home, a traditional household. She, with a rebellious heart, craved freedom and refused to be shackled. Bill would later admit bitterly that Goldie wanted an open marriage, a notion he considered betrayal. In his memoir, he alleged she had affairs with Warren Beatty, Eve Renier, and several others while still his wife. Bill felt humiliated, reduced to a bystander in his own marriage, while Goldie believed she had the right to live true to her free spirit. By 1980, Bill filed for divorce. What followed was a bitter battle. They fought over custody, hurled accusations through the press. Bill branded Goldie selfish, cruel, fake, while Goldie chose silence, clutching her children and moving forward. But the deepest wound was not theirs. It was the children's. Oliver and Kate grew up in the void of a father's absence, and their pain eventually spilled into the open. On Father's Day 2015, Oliver posted a photo with the biting caption, "Happy Abandonment Day." Bill lashed out, declaring he no longer considered Oliver and Kate his children. It was the breaking point of a family tragedy. 2 children, once the fruit of love, now left with permanent scars. Goldie, once America's sweetheart on screen, carried in her eyes the sorrow of a mother who knew her children would bear the wounds of her marriage forever. Her union with Bill Hudson did not just collapse. It left aftershocks that echoed for decades. For Goldie, it was a brutal reminder that marriage happiness is not for everyone, and that love, when forced into the cage of tradition, can suffocate the very soul it once sought to protect. After her shattered marriage to Bill Hudson, Goldie Hawn entered a period of exhausting uncertainty. She remained dazzling on screen, her smile still able to ignite theaters with laughter. But once the lights dimmed, she was left with silent rooms and a heart entangled in pain. And so she plunged into relationships as if trying to fill the void inside. Yet each one only deepened the wound. Mark Goddard, her love from before fame, once gave Goldie a sense of innocence and purity. They spent nearly 2 years together with simple dates and shared dreams of the future. But when Goldie rocketed to stardom, that young love was left behind, a fading shadow unable to keep pace with her rising career. To ease the loneliness, Goldie turned to Ted Grossman, a rugged man who risked his life in stunt work. He supported her through fragile days, but their bond was only a thin sheet of ice, unable to hide the cracks. Goldie realized that even with a strong man by her side, she still felt unsteady. Then came Bruno Wenzel, a Swedish opera singer. Together they traveled to Europe, laughing in steam rooms against the winter chill. But those sweet days quickly vanished. Goldie returned to Hollywood's flashing lights while Bruno remained a provincial artist. 2 different worlds, inevitably drifting apart. At times, she was swept into the orbit of Franco Nero, the Italian star with deep, mesmerizing eyes. Rumors swirled of nights spent together, of touches more than friendly. But Goldie knew Nero was only a passing breeze. When the door closed, she was once again left with familiar solitude. Most devastating was Warren Beatty, Hollywood's notorious womanizer. Goldie admitted she was drawn to him more than once. Beatty was handsome, powerful, impossible to resist, yet the entanglement only further fractured her family. Her ex-husband, Bill Hudson, wrote bitterly in his memoir that Goldie had flaunted her affairs, turning their marriage into a joke. The rumors about Beatty drowned her image in accusations of being selfish, cruel, fake. Then came Yves Renier, the French actor who entered Goldie's life just as her marriage unraveled. He once cradled baby Kate Hudson in his arms, trying to step into a father's role. But it was only a desperate escape. When reality returned, Renier disappeared, leaving Goldie to face the void once more. Even fleeting flings, with Victor Dry, a wealthy producer, or Burt Reynolds, then crowned the sexiest man in Hollywood, brought no peace. Reynolds would later recall Goldie with tenderness, while she was left with only a wistful smile, admitting it was a love beautiful, but never enough. And so, after it all, Goldie realized she could make audiences roar with laughter. She could make millions cheer when she appeared. But when the door closed, what remained was only the sigh of a woman who had drifted from man to man, still unable to find a place to lay down her heart. Hollywood is full of lights and traps, and Goldie Hawn had lived through countless romances that left her heart in shreds. But then destiny brought her to Kurt Russell, the only man who gave Goldie's wandering heart a true home. They first met in 1966 on the set of the one and only genuine original family band. Goldie was 21, brimming with energy and dreams. Kurt was just 16, naive but curious about the wider world. That moment passed quickly, but for Goldie, it was the first time she met a man who felt both strange and familiar. A small spark shining through the shadows of a childhood marked by loss. Neither knew fate was beginning to write a new chapter of their lives. Before meeting Goldie, Kurt had endured an unsettled childhood. As the son of Bing Russell, an actor who was successful but emotionally distant, Kurt saw the harsh realities of show business from a young age. He started acting at 9, pressured to become Hollywood's golden boy. Forced to grow up too soon, he experienced loneliness and detachment from his parents. Early failures in career and love made him guarded in relationships, but they also built a quiet strength and an inner resolve few could recognize. 17 years later, in 1983, destiny reunited them on the set of Swing Shift. By then, Kurt had grown into a talented actor respected by Hollywood, versatile in comedy, action, family films, and dramas, proving his worth not just through Hollywood lineage, but his own perseverance. In a drunken blur, he blurted out, "Man, you got a great figure." What sounded casual, even clumsy, struck Goldie differently. Instead of insult or offense, she laughed, a laugh that carried challenge, almost like a hidden message. "I've been through enough, but if you're real, prove it." And in her eyes, Kurt saw both resilience and an unhealed wound. Their first date was no picture-perfect romance. They went to the Playboy Club, then broke into Goldie's newly purchased house. Wild, reckless, a silent vow that we'll do things our way. The night ended with police escorting them out and into a hotel, where Kurt gently comforted her, and Goldie laughed amidst the chaos. What seemed ridiculous was in fact their test, their definition of love, absurd, unexpected, but real. What moved Goldie most was not Kurt's charm or fame, but how he looked at her children, Oliver and Kate. Here was a man who not only loved her but also accepted and protected 2 young hearts already scarred. In a world where she had fought to keep love alive, Kurt became her steady anchor. No judgment, no demands, only unconditional acceptance. Goldie once said, "What touched me wasn't how handsome he was, but how he treated Oliver and Kate." Their love story wasn't built on flashy headlines. It was quiet evenings, family trips, small shared jokes, and comfortable silences. They learned to move past old wounds. Goldie, scarred by 2 failed marriages, learned to trust again. Kurt, shaped by a lonely childhood and early struggles, learned to open his heart and be patient with true love. Every day together became a journey of healing. Each smile, each glance, each gentle touch proof of their resilience. In 1986, Wyatt Russell was born, the embodiment of their love, the proof of a family built on harmony. Goldie and Kurt created not only a bond for themselves, but also a safe, happy home for their children, for hearts that had once been broken. No divorces, no courtroom battles, only understanding and a love that endured, needing no validation from Hollywood, only from their own hearts. Looking back, Goldie realized every brief affair, every heartbreak, every restless search had led her to Kurt, the one man who filled her empty rooms with laughter, who slowly healed her wounds, and who gave her heart, lost for so many years, a place to rest in peace. In a world where marriage is seen as the ultimate destination, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell chose the opposite path. They have been together for more than 41 years, raising children, weathering Hollywood's highs and lows, sharing both the spotlight and the shadows. Yet never once have they walked down the aisle. Goldie once put it bluntly, I want to wake up every morning with the choice to stay, not because I'm bound by a piece of paper. For her, happiness was never in a marriage certificate, but in the daily decision to remain side by side, even with the freedom to leave. Kurt, too, dismissed the need for rings to prove anything. Why does everyone care whether we're married? What matters is that we want to be together. They turned not marrying into a bold statement, a love strong enough not to need the guarantees of law, a commitment greater than any ceremony. There were moments when they turned doubt into unforgettable memories. In 1989, appearing together on the Oscar stage, Goldie teased, "Is that a proposal?" Kurt laughed and replied, "We'll talk about it later." The audience erupted, but behind the joke lay a truth. They never needed a wedding to validate their love. Nearly 3 decades later, in 2017, they brought the world to tears when they received their stars together on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Facing a sea of cameras, Kurt turned to Goldie and said with emotion, "I owe you this wonderful life." It was not just gratitude. It was the most genuine vow, one that needed no altar to sanctify it. Through 4 decades, Goldie and Kurt have proven, a family needs no wedding bands, a love needs no promise of "till death do us part." It can still be enduring, profound, and more beautiful than any ritual. True commitment lies not in a ring, but in the choice to stay, day after day, year after year. If Goldie Hawn's career brought her to the heights of stardom, then family was where she found her greatest joys, yet also the deepest, most unhealed cracks. From her 2 previous marriages, Goldie had Oliver and Kate. When she began her life with Kurt, these 2 children were the first true test. Kurt passed it, not only through his love for Goldie, but also with the tenderness and responsibility he gave her children. Kate once said openly, "I think of Kurt as my real dad." To her, he was the one who truly walked beside her through life, not Bill Hudson, the biological father who left an irreplaceable void. Oliver, however, carried heavier wounds. On Father's Day in 2015, he publicly mocked his own father with the words, "Happy Abandonment Day." Bill responded with bitterness, disowning his son. Behind the radiant smiles of Goldie's family, there were always fractures that no reunion could mend. In 1986, Wyatt, Goldie and Kurt's son, was born, becoming the permanent bond that held the family together. Wyatt grew up balanced, living with both the shine of fame and the quiet protection of his parents. As an adult, he followed the family tradition into acting, yet carried his father's simplicity and his mother's free-spirited soul. Today, the Goldie-Kurt family counts 7 grandchildren: Ryder, Bingham, Ronnie Rose, Wilder, Bodie, Rio, and Buddy. These names are more than proof of a thriving clan. They are the emotional anchor for Goldie and Kurt in their later years. Holiday gatherings, the entire family together in their warm home, or hand in hand on the red carpet, have become symbols of love and rare unity in Hollywood's turbulent world. Kate Hudson once laughed and said, "My family is crazy but full of life. We're different, but we're fun and we're close." That one line summed it all up. Under Goldie Hawn's roof, there were tears, conflicts, and loss, but also laughter that echoed and a closeness nothing could break. Goldie Hawn's life has not only been measured in films, but also in the spaces she has lived in, the places she has chosen to call home. In those spaces, luxury and spirituality intertwine, shaping a lifestyle that is both glamorous and serene, a protective wall against old wounds and a sanctuary where her heart finds healing. As early as the 1990s, Goldie and Kurt began building an enviable real estate portfolio. They owned a Manhattan penthouse, purchased in 1997 for $3.8 million, a high-rise apartment with glass walls opening onto sweeping views of New York, where sunlight filled every dawn. Yet inside, Goldie infused it with her own spiritual touch. Buddha statues, incense, candles, Indian-inspired patterns. For her, it wasn't just shelter in a noisy city. It was a meditation oasis in the heart of Manhattan. There was also a vineyard in Santa Barbara, a space that evoked nature, life, and cycles of renewal. And in Colorado, they kept a holiday home, where the entire family, children, and grandchildren alike gathered for Christmas. In that cozy house nestled in the snow, laughter echoed, chasing away the loneliness that had once haunted Goldie. Each winter, the scene became a ritual, binding the family together in love and shared warmth. The home most tied to their lives was in Pacific Palisades, bought in 2004 and sold in 2017 for $6.9 million. It was a true family haven, a sauna, private gym, turquoise pool, and a meditation garden with a quiet corner for morning breathing. Its warm interiors and abundant light reflected a philosophy. Happiness needs no grandeur, only closeness and peace. When they had to part with the house, Goldie admitted it felt like saying goodbye to a piece of their youth, a small cut in her long journey toward inner calm. Today, Goldie and Kurt live in a new Palisades estate, but upheaval struck again when the house was burglarized in both 2023 and 2024. Goldie recalled her shock walking into a room, seeing cabinets smashed open, valuables stolen. Just months later, while home alone, she heard another loud noise. Another intruder had tried to break in. The two incidents left her sleepless, haunted, until she hired constant security. Eventually, they decided to leave Malibu behind, moving to Palm Desert, further away, quieter, trading proximity for safety. What makes Goldie's home special isn't just their million-dollar value, but how they reflect her soul. Step into the living room and you find a yellow armchair where Goldie often sits to share her philosophy. Laughter heals the soul. On the shelves sit books on Buddhism, spirituality, and the art of living. In one corner, a Buddha statue rests among greenery and candlelight, a grounding presence against the storms of her private life. Even in the kitchen, the heart of the home, there is a bed for the family dog, so her pet could lie beside her as she cooked or talked with loved ones. For Goldie, family extends beyond children and grandchildren, embracing even the smallest creatures. To her, a home means this: a place where no one, not even animals, is left behind. Looking at Goldie Hawn's lifestyle, one thing is clear. She could own anything, from Manhattan penthouses to Palisades mansions, from luxurious pools to incense-filled meditation rooms. But what she truly sought was inner peace. And in her 70s, after heartbreaks, losses, and upheavals, she has come to understand. Peace is not in possessions, but in the laughter that fills a home, in opening her eyes each morning to see that the ones she loves are still there. By her side, fame is often a mask hiding private fears. For Goldie Hawn, after more than half a century of radiant smiles before the camera, the shadows have never stopped closing in, reminders that no one escapes the fragility of life. One of the most recent blows came from two break-ins at her Malibu estate. The first happened when Goldie and Kurt went out for dinner, gone for only a few hours. When they returned, the sight before her made her collapse. The security door smashed open, closets wrecked, jewelry, tokens tied to her life's journey, vanished. Goldie later said she lost her mind for a few minutes, not because of the material loss, but because of the violation, the exposure, inside her own home. What seemed like a nightmare ended up happening again just 4 months later. Alone at home, she heard a loud noise upstairs. Her heart tightened. She prayed it was nothing, but it wasn't. Another intruder had tried to break in. This time, the fear reached its peak because she realized, they can come in even while I'm here. From then on, she confessed, she never dared be alone again, always needing bodyguards at her side. The two shocks forced Goldie and Kurt to leave the home they had cherished for years, retreating instead to Palm Desert, remote, quieter, safer. It was more than a security decision. It was another sign of old age's fragility, a once unshakable star now seeking refuge from fear. But Goldie's fractures were not only caused by burglars. Family ghosts still lingered. She had lost a baby boy before her sister Patty was born, a grief that marked her for life. That pain echoed years later in the deep rift between her children and their father, Bill Hudson. Oliver once wrote publicly, "Happy Abandonment Day" on Father's Day, turning family memories into an open war. Bill retaliated by disowning his son. Goldie, though she fought to hold her family together, could never erase the emptiness. Her family had love, had connection, but also wounds that never healed. In her twilight years, Goldie has not hidden her fear of loneliness. In interviews, she admitted Hollywood is a place quick to lift someone to the clouds, but just as quick to abandon them to oblivion. She said, "What I fear most isn't aging, it's being forgotten." Behind the smile and the golden hair is a woman fighting the shadows in her own mind, haunted by loss, by fading, by the void left when the stage lights dim. And it is those very shadows that make people love Goldie Hawn even more. For the more dazzling she appears before the world, the more fragile she is in her silence. Oscars, 2025. The entire hall lit up when Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell appeared, hand in hand, as if 41 years had passed in the blink of an eye. At 79, Goldie wore a dazzling golden Dolce & Gabbana gown, her smile still radiant, her eyes still carrying that youthful sparkle. Kurt, in a classic black tuxedo, stood beside her like a guardian, proud yet tender. But as they stepped onto the stage, an unexpected moment left the audience breathless. Goldie leaned toward the teleprompter, then laughed and said, "Sweetheart, can you read that?" "I can't read that. I'm completely blind. I am. Cataracts." The words were both a confession and a joke. She did not hide the truth, that she was battling cataracts, that her vision was betraying her after so many long years. Andrew Garfield, her co-presenter on stage, smiled warmly, stepped in, and read the unfinished lines for her. The audience laughed, then fell silent. In that moment, they saw a Goldie Hawn no longer flawless, no longer invincible, but utterly sincere. And there, by her side, Kurt, through a hand held tight, through a steady gaze, became her shield. When asked about the secret to keeping their love alive for 41 years, Kurt simply smiled, turned to Goldie and said, "We still like being together. We still do it. No grand philosophies, no lofty promises. just a simple truth. Every day, they still choose each other. The entire hall rose in applause, not only to honor a career, but to witness a living proof that love can endure divorce, loss, temptation, old age, even the dimming of eyesight. That night, the Oscars for Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell was no longer an award stage. It was a final love ballad, a declaration that in Hollywood, where marriages often fade fast, there still exists an exception bearing their names. The love story of Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell has transcended Hollywood. It is not just about two stars who have stayed together for over 4 decades. It is living proof that true love does not need a marriage certificate to endure. They turned the simple choice of staying together each day into the most unbreakable vow. Their legacy is not only in classic films like Cactus Flower, Private Benjamin, or Overboard, but also in a statement: happiness is not found in rituals, but in freedom, patience, and the quiet trust two people give each other. They showed the world that even in Hollywood, where love often fades fast, an exception can exist. A love strong enough to overcome loss, temptation, and the trials of age. And you, do you believe that a love without marriage can outlast the grandest of weddings? If you do, leave a comment. Yes, Goldie and Kurt, and share your thoughts about this rare love story, as well as your congratulations to them for sustaining such a beautiful bond through the decades. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving stories from Hollywood.